29 caves carved into a horseshoe-shaped cliff contain some of humanity's greatest artistic treasures, yet they were lost to the world for over 1,000 years. These aren't just any caves, they're the Ajanta Caves, where ancient Buddhist monks didn't just create art, they revolutionized it, developing techniques so advanced that they would influence Asian artistic expression for the next 15 centuries. Deep in the Deccan plateau of western India, along the Waghora River, lies a crescent-shaped escarpment that conceals one of archaeology's most stunning discoveries. Between the 2nd century BCE and the 5th century CE, generations of Buddhist monks transformed this remote cliff face into a magnificent complex of monasteries and prayer halls, each one a testament to human devotion and artistic genius. The story begins during the reign of the Satavahana dynasty, when Buddhism was spreading rapidly across the Indian subcontinent. Wealthy merchants and royal patrons, seeking spiritual merit, funded the excavation of these caves as retreats for monks during the monsoon season. What started as simple rock-cut shelters evolved into something far more extraordinary. The caves fall into two distinct phases of construction, separated by nearly 4 centuries. The earlier caves, dating from the 2nd century BCE to the 1st century CE, were austere and functional, designed purely for meditation and religious study. Cave 10, known as the Chaitya Hall, exemplifies this period with its soaring ribbed ceiling that mimics wooden architecture, complete with a massive stupa at its heart. But it was during the second phase, under the patronage of the Vakataka dynasty in the 5th century CE, that Ajanta truly became revolutionary. The later caves weren't just places of worship. They were canvases for an artistic explosion that would change the course of Asian art forever. Cave 1 stands as the crown jewel of this renaissance. Its walls are covered in frescoes so vivid and lifelike that they seem to breathe with ancient life. The famous Bodhisattva Padmapani, painted on the left wall of the antechamber, gazes down with eyes so compassionate and human that visitors still feel moved to tears 15 centuries later. This isn't mere decoration. It's storytelling through pigment and form. The artistic techniques developed at Ajanta were nothing short of revolutionary. The monks and artists working here pioneered the use of multiple layers of plaster, creating surfaces smooth enough for the most delicate brushwork. They developed a unique fresco technique called fresco secco, painting on dry plaster with pigments mixed with a binding agent. This allowed for incredible detail and color gradation that was impossible with traditional fresco methods. The color palette itself tells a story of ancient trade networks. The deep blues came from lapis lazuli, transported from Afghanistan. The brilliant reds were derived from cinnabar and red ochre. Gold leaf, applied with meticulous care, still glimmers in the flickering light of oil lamps, just as it did when these caves were alive with monastic activity. But perhaps most revolutionary was their approach to depicting the human form. The artists at Ajanta developed sophisticated techniques for showing volume, shadow, and three-dimensional space on flat surfaces. They understood foreshortening, used gradual color transitions to suggest depth, and created a sense of movement that brings their figures to life. The famous dying princess in Cave 16 demonstrates this mastery. Her face, tilted in anguish, shows such psychological depth that it rivals Renaissance portraiture. The subject matter was equally groundbreaking. While earlier Buddhist art focused on symbols and avoided depicting the Buddha directly, Ajanta's artists boldly portrayed not just the Buddha, but entire narratives from his previous lives, known as Jataka tales. Cave 17 contains over a dozen of these stories, each one a masterpiece of visual storytelling. The Vesantara Jataka, depicting a prince's ultimate act of generosity, unfolds across the cave's walls like an ancient comic strip, complete with emotional expressions and dramatic gestures. These weren't just religious paintings, they were windows into 5th century Indian life. Court scenes show elaborate hairstyles, jewelry, and clothing that archaeologists used to understand ancient fashion. Musical instruments, architectural details, and even the way people held their hands while speaking provide invaluable insights into a lost world. The sculptural work was equally innovative. The massive Buddha figures, carved into the cave walls, show a perfect understanding of proportion and anatomy. The famous teaching Buddha in Cave 26 sits in meditation, his face serene, his hands positioned in the gesture of turning the wheel of Dharma. The sculpture achieves a sense of inner peace so profound that it transcends religious boundaries. But Ajanta's influence extended far beyond its cliff face. As Buddhism spread along the Silk Road, monks and pilgrims carried these artistic techniques across Asia. The wall paintings of Dunhuang in China, the temple art of Southeast Asia, and even the Buddhist art of Japan all show clear influence from Ajanta's innovations. Then, around the 7th century CE, something remarkable happened. Ajanta was abandoned. As Buddhism declined in India and Hinduism resurged, the caves were gradually forgotten. Jungle vines crept over the entrances, and centuries of monsoon rains created a natural camouflage that hid these masterpieces from the world. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe for more untold history every single day. See you in the next one.